Turn to the UN General Assembly as another head of state takes the floor.
Universal premise that is multilateralism, this premise that our organization has embodied since its creation, has never been as severely undermined as it is today before our very eyes. Indeed, we bear witness to an unprecedented intensification in crises throughout the world. We see an increase in the number of conflicts, which are becoming ever more complex in nature. We are seeing unprecedented food insecurity. We are seeing dangerous threats to biodiversity. We are even witnessing attempts to reassess those commitments made that collectively and ratified on this very spot in this room to protect the environment and to preserve the planet, which is our common home. And if this wasn't enough, we see an exacerbation in the disagreements and hostilities between permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. The Council, whose primary vocation is to maintain peace in the world by working together. Faced with this situation, which is exacerbating our common weaknesses and which shed light on our collective vulnerabilities, only a consensual and inclusive approach, a peaceful and coordinated approach, can help us to find the right answers to these problems. I believe that the theme of our general debate provides us real possibilities. Indeed, by calling for transformative solutions, this debate appeals strongly to our collective conscience regarding these ever more numerous challenges besieging us on a daily basis, and which at times take a dramatic turn. One needs only to think of the current war in Ukraine, to these apocalyptic projections, which are not without reason, that are being made today by strategists and other military experts about a possible tragic turn of events. Mr. President, because of the considerable risk of a nuclear disaster that these events are causing for the entire planet, not only those involved in this conflict, but also those foreign powers who could influence the course of events by appeasing them, should all temper their zeal. They must stop fanning the flames, and they must turn their backs on this type of vanity of the powerful, which has so far closed the door to dialogue. Under the auspices of the United Nations, we must all commit without delay to peace negotiations. Just, sincere, and equitable negotiations. After Waterloo, we know that since the Vienna Congress, all wars finish around the table of negotiations. The world urgently needs these negotiations to prevent the current confrontations, which are already so devastating, to prevent them from going even further and thrusting humanity into what could be an irremediable cataclysm, a widespread nuclear war beyond the control of the great powers themselves. This war, about which Einstein, the great atomic theorist, said solemnly that if it was to be fought, it would be the last battle that humans would fight on Earth. Mr. President, Nelson Mandela, a man of eternal forgiveness, said that peace is a long road, but it has no alternative. It has no price. In reality, the Russians and Ukrainians have no other choice but to take this path, the path of peace. Moreover, we too should go with them because we must, throughout the world, be legions working together in solidarity, and we must be able to impose the unconditional option of peace on the war lobbies. Now, I wish to be direct and specifically address you, my dear Russian and Ukrainian friends. Too much blood has been spilt. Too much blood, the sacred blood of your sweet children. It's time to stop this mass destruction. It's time to stop this war. The entire world is watching you. The time has come to fight for life, just as you courageously and selflessly fought together against the Nazis during World War II, in particular in Leningrad, in Stalingrad, in Kursk, and in Berlin. Think about the youth of your two countries. Think about the fate of your future generations. It is time to fight for peace. It's time to fight for them. Please, give peace a real chance. Today, before it is too late for us all. I humbly ask this of you. Mr. President, what I have just said in my basic Russian, what I have just said about the events in Ukraine could allow one to draw a parallel, although perhaps at a completely different scale, with the dramatic situation that Libya has been dealing with since 2011, a situation in which the President Denis Sassou Nguesso, President of the Republic of Congo, has been so invested for many years on behalf of the African Union. The peace efforts that he is carrying out in this, on this thorny issue have continued recently on the 14th and 15th of July, 2022, in Brazzaville, during consultations which brought together several actors who represent the core of the Libyan social and political views. The goal here is to encourage the protagonists here to speak together, to bring their understandings of the challenges their country has been facing since the failed elections on the 24th of December 2021, to bring their understandings closer. The Inter-Libyan Reconciliation Conference, which is the aim of African mediation, will only make sense if it is inclusive, if it is constructive and consensus-based. It must allow our Libyan sisters and brothers to stop staring each other down, but to forgive each other, to renew dialogue, and to place prominence on justice, which is the foundation of a Libya reborn, for which they are to write a new history. I wish from this rostrum to commend the nomination of Mr. Abdoulaye Batili as the Secretary General's Special Representative for Libya. I can already assure him of the unconditional support of President Denis Sassou Nguesso, who is at the head of the African Union's High-Level Committee for Libya. Mr. President, the forests of the Congo Basin are the second largest environmental reservoir on the planet. We have been preserving these forests for years as we hold them dear to our hearts, and we are still waiting to be provided with support that would be commensurate to the essential issues that these forests represent. We rarely recall the commitments that have been made from Copenhagen to Glasgow and under the Paris agreements. All those commitments that were made with enthusiasm, but to this day remain unfulfilled by rich countries, those who are responsible for 80% of greenhouse gas emissions. Despite this, however, as we prepare for COP27, which Africa will host next November, we hope that at least this we are used to, these conventional formulas and commitments in words alone, this time we hope that finally significant resources will be mobilized for poor countries who have become even more vulnerable due to climate disruptions. In all events, with the lowest deforestation rates in the world of only 0.06%, my country, the Republic of Congo, is doing its part and will continue to do so on behalf of environmental preservation, on behalf of the survival of humanity. The establishment of a blue fund for the Congo Basin participates in the regional plan for this commitment that we have made, and in cooperation with the government of the United Kingdom, who presides over COP26, the government of my country plans in the next few weeks to launch a political forum entitled Leaders Partnership on Forests and Climate. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I could not conclude my statement and leave this rostrum without mentioning two situations which should unceasingly appeal to our conscience. Two situations that we morally cannot give up on. The first situation concerns the United Nations Security Council reform, which has become a sort of broken record that everyone glosses over and whose conclusion seems every day to move further away from its noble goals, while the inclusion of Africa in the management of world affairs is self-evident today. Africa must indeed take its place in the community of nations. To think otherwise is simply to exhibit selfishness and to row against the current of history. Continuing to prevaricate over the idea of admitting two African countries as permanent members to the United Nations Security Council is nothing more than willingly choosing to discredit our prestigious organization. We, the representatives of allied countries meeting here within the United Nations, must choose honor here and today. And we must go down in history by ridding ourselves once and for all of these medieval and cryptic prejudices against Africa that have for too long humiliated and unjustly treated this part of the world. The second situation concerns the endless embargo on Cuba, an embargo that has lasted since the second half of the last century, which continues to cause indescribable suffering to the people of this country. Mr. President, this embargo, which is totally anachronistic and obsolete, should have long since been abolished. On behalf of my country, I once again call from this rostrum on the wisdom of the American people and its leaders. Leaders who, as we know, have for the most part nothing to do with this old-fashioned embodiment of the Cold War. On this subject, and I wish to conclude here, Mr. President, I wish to very respectfully speak to President Biden, who has long promoted the idea of peace and spoke of it last week at this very same rostrum. Mr. President, be courageous. Without any further delay, close this dark chapter of your relations with Cuba, which belongs in the past. By doing so, you will undeniably open a new perspective in the glorious history of your beautiful country. And posterity, I am convinced, will thank you. I thank you.
We were watching live the statements of Jean-Claude Gakosso, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Francophonie and Congolese abroad. Gakosso referred to international